Joe, I would say, Joe and Ralph are the two artists I would credit most with establishing the look of Star Wars. And what Joe did is he took Ralph's kind of elegant, magical, fantastic designs and ruggedized them and added some real engineering heart to them as well. So the two of them were great complements to each other. Ralph, well, Joe specifically, Joe designed the saucer-shaped Millennium Falcon for Episode 4, which was a relatively late addition to the movie, if you know your Star Wars history. And as well, he designed the look of Boba Fett and the speeder bikes from Episode 6, and the Scout Walkers from Episode 5. But to get to the design of the Scout Walkers, he started off with some various different sketches. Here's an early one. This one actually made it into a newspaper strip in the 80s, illustrated by Al Williamson. But when we found it in the archives, the folks on Rebels decided that's going to be on the show. So this is the ATDP walker that's going to be in the series. And that stands for All-Terrain Defense Pod. It's tasked with protecting the assets on Lothal Imperial Operations Installations. Nice big heavy laser cannon out there on its chin. And inside, it's got stadium seating, so that's great. It's driver up front, gunner in the back. When the Empire needs to get somewhere swiftly, it deploys speeder bikes, of course, but these are the speeder bikes that we're going to see in Lothal. Again, these are from Joe Johnston design. The interesting thing about this, it's actually a telescoping design. The forks and the steering vanes, you kind of telescope into the body, so the whole thing kind of compresses for, I don't know, ease of stowage, I guess. Now, when it comes to, well, when you need to transport a squad of troopers or bring a bunch of prisoners in over land, what vehicle do you use for that? Sometimes the old designs are the best, and we've got a video to highlight that one. So we can play that.
It's the Star Wars Imperial Troop Transporter that you put together. Batteries not included. Stormtroopers sold separately.
What's that? It's my troop transporter. It makes 5 more sounds, too.
Are you thinking where are you?
There's the laser cannon, stun gun, and stormtrooper.
Did he say that?
Oh, Dad.
Star Wars Imperial Troop Transporter. Stormtroopers sold separately. New from Kenner.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, believe it or not, we are dusting off this old chestnut. Who had one of these? Raise your hands. Who had one of these? Yeah. This is not sacrilege. This was open before I got here. We are taking this classic design and turning it into a workable ship. You know, in revisiting, we had to make some changes. We had to beef it up. You know, the troopers here kind of just sit like they're sitting on lawn chairs. This is a little bit larger in scale, and we got the prisoner transports and the stormtrooper sockets on the side. I'm glad we managed to keep the adorable turret. It's got the cutest guns in the Empire. Look at that. So yes, we will see an Imperial troop transport, and if there was ever any doubt that there are old school fans working on the show, just look at that Kenner goodness finally being brought to life. Let me put this someplace safe. All right, so that's the ground forces, right? Yeah. So when it comes to protecting the skies and the space over Lothal, obviously we turn to TIE fighters. And as you saw in the introductory video, TIE fighters, this piece of art greatly influenced the development of the TIE fighter. And it's really Ralph art, so the proportions of the TIE fighter are different. It's got the larger ball cockpit and the smaller wings, and which coincidentally, or maybe not so coincidentally, is what makes it look like the Kenner toy. So in this case, the TIE fighter that's going to be in Star Wars Rebels, and here it is, without texture, it's just the geometry of the model, more closely resembles the toy, but that wasn't by intent. It's just we're basing it on the same piece of artwork that we believe the Kenner artist based it off. All right, I'm going to warn you, I'm going to go off on a tangent here just because we're a room full of fans and I want to illustrate the kind of detail and debate that enters into discussing classic Star Wars stuff. So, let's see. How does one get into a TIE fighter? Anyone know? Does anyone have any guess? Want to throw it up there? The top, all right? That's what, all right. This is the kind of debate we have. First of all, for the show, we have to create the interior of the TIE fighter, which means referencing a lot of photography and the film footage that was shot in the set, to which we face our first conundrum, and this happens a lot in Star Wars, in that the interior of the ship does not actually fit the exterior of the model. So there always has to be creative push and pull. And And a lot of people said you enter in through the top, and that's what this cross-section art from an old 1997 cross-sections book that was published in UK kind of posited. The hatch is the top, that's how you enter it. And that seems to be the consensus based on, well, it seems to be memories of the old Kinder toy. But if you look at the original ILM blueprints during the making of the TIE Fighter, this is Steve Gawley's blueprints from ILM. I'm going to zoom in on that one. Look at that. The hatch is in the back. You go in and out of the TIE Fighter from the back of it. And if you look at the set, they did some attempt to support that. There's that hexagonal window behind the TIE Pilot right there. And you know, that corresponds to this window on the back of the TIE. And then, you know, if you look at the circle, it's got all these greeblies and gears, and that part doesn't. So clearly, yeah, of course, you get in through the back. But the case against that is the fact that they use the same cockpit for Vader. And so Vader's got that thing back there. But if you look at Vader's ship, there it is here, you can see it's got blueprint stuff, blue screen stuff so that you can see the trench behind it. But if you look at Vader's ship, there's no window back there. So that throws in the counter argument, well, that's not a portal, that's got to be some sort of view screen or something, I don't know. The thing is, Vader can't get out through there, so Vader must get through the top. And if Vader gets out through the top, why can't everyone get out through the top? This is the kind of emails that we shoot back and forth through the development of Star Wars stuff. And that's a long way of saying that we avoided the whole thing by chickening out and saying that this is an earlier version of a TIE Fighter anyway. So we're putting the hatch on the top, and that doesn't make any statement whatsoever on what the Episode 4 TIE Fighters do, since that's 5 years down the line of the timeline anyway, so we dodge a bullet there. When developing ships for Rebels, especially on the Imperial forces, we realized we needed something in between the spectrum of the TIE Fighter and the super large capital ships that the Empire wields. We did something mid-sized. And as a starting point, Dave Filoni directed his artists to this freighter design from Episode 1. This actual image is from Episode 2. It's a freighter designed by Doug Chang. It's called the Gozanti Freighter inside that's what its name is anyway. And it's one of the few ships from Episode 1 that really has an original trilogy aesthetic. It has, I'm going to use some model making terms here, it has scribed planes, which is like flat areas of the model with lines on it, which in the old days would have been done just by